Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I'll review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication. And today, at long last, I am continuing my exploration of the Stephen King televised works that I never got around to the first go around on the podcast, which brings us to 2006, which brings us to Mick Garris's adaptation of Stephen King's Desperation. So I am really interested in being able to explore this with all of you and talk about this to all of you. And if you have any thoughts at any time on anything that I discuss in this episode, any previous episodes, or anything that you want in any future episodes, please write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Now, I just want to take a moment before I get into the adaptation itself to just thank everyone for listening today. For longtime listeners, thank you for sticking with me on this journey that started way back when in 2014, which, man, doesn't seem like yesterday, but it was a lifetime ago. Think about everything that's happened in the world since 2014. And yet something stays the same. Despite all of these challenges, something stays the same. That is, Stephen King has continued to have a sizable and notable cultural impact on our society. Actually, you could argue that he hit new heights since this podcast first started. So thank you, everyone, for being along for this ride. And if you haven't already, I just want to say, hey, head on over to patreon.com/StephenKingcast, because if you enjoy the analysis for the Stephen King based episodes, whether it's the reviews of the novels, the adaptations, short stories, anything. If you like what I do on this main feed, I am doubling the output, tripling the output of what I have been doing, because I have currently 2 feeds that you could choose from over on Patreon. So let me just take a couple minutes to walk you through both of them in case you are interested in one or both of them. So what you're listening to right now is the Stephen King Cast, the free podcast that you can get wherever you listen to podcasts. But if you head on over to Patreon, you can sign up for the Constant Reader podcast, which gets you early access to the episodes that you like to listen to on this feed. So this is really good for anyone that has been a long time listener and is caught up on the massive back catalog in the feed. So if you just want to stay on top of things, you can head on over to that particular feed, the Constant Reader tier. But what's good about the Constant Reader tier is that's more than just early access to these episodes. You'll also get book reviews of non-Stephen King books, and you're going to be able to get episodes about Stephen King news. So anytime there's Stephen King news, I will do an episode about it. Right now, there hasn't been a lot of Stephen King news, but anytime that there's news regarding an adaptation or the upcoming new publication, what have you, I will be able to discuss it there. In terms of non-Stephen King books, I am in the midst of, and I'm having a blast doing this, rereading a bunch of Dean Koontz novels, and I'm going to start putting the reviews of those novels up on the Constant Reader tier with the same level of scrutiny, of analysis, of depth that you have come to enjoy from the Stephen King cast. I'm just applying it now to Dean Koontz. And over on Other Worlds Than These, as the title suggests, this allows me to be able to explore everything not related to Stephen King out in the fandom. So this allows me to do some deep dives, as I have, into Batman, into Daredevil, into the state of the MCU. As I record this episode, I just took a break from putting together my thoughts on an upcoming Star Wars episode to get ready for the 4th. May the 4th be with you. So I'll be dropping an episode then. And I will give my thoughts on the currently airing Maul Shadow Lord. When Mandalorian and Grogu comes out, I'll be reviewing that. So I'm going to be focusing some time on on Star Wars. I'm also going to be looking at The Boys. When there are horror movies that I ingest, I'll be giving my thoughts on those on that feed. So far, I have Primate, the movie that came out around January, I would say. It was a great movie to watch. And I put together my thoughts, and you can get them there. My thoughts on Monarch: Legacy of Monsters, Godzilla, and as we head in the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and as we head into the summer, the big movies and television shows I'll be able to cover over there as well. So that has been a blast. So if you have liked what I have done over here on this feed, I'm doing the same thing over there on the Patreon feed. So just check it out and let me know what you would like to get out of it. And I can't make any guarantees, but if you suggest something that never came to mind and it's in my wheelhouse, I would love to be able to cover that so that we can go on this journey together. And like I said, if at any point you have any thoughts on anything, just write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. So what I'm doing today on this feed, on the Stephen King Cast, or if you're listening to Constant Reader tier over on Patreon and you're getting this early, so welcome. If you are listening to this in the future, a year from now, 2 years from now, then I have placed this podcast episode in the chronological order of Stephen King's publication of the novel Desperation. So right now, as you're getting this, I am keeping things contained to an examination of all the televised works that I never got around to during my initial run through the chronology. But now that I'm able to do this cleanup, once I get through this wave, I will then resort these episodes where they should fall within the main feed. So maybe there's a chance that you're listening to this and you're wondering to yourself, why is he talking about these televised works that he hasn't gone around to? Because chances are you may have just listened to my review of Stephen King's Desperation, the book, and immediately following that is the ending, my analysis of the ending of Desperation, and then following that is this episode that you're listening to right now, the adaptation directed by Mick Garris of Desperation. So there's a little bit of time travel here, which is really, really fun, because you get my original review of Desperation, which came out in 2014, 2015. Then you got my review of the ending, which probably came out around 2020, and now this is coming out in 2026. So the passage of time is inevitable, and it continues forward. But one thing that is true, Stephen King, and he ties us together, and he keeps us tethered here across the years, which is always a great feeling. So I'm going to review Mick Garris's Desperation. I'm going to talk about it a little bit. But first, I just mentioned the Stephen King Cast email address, stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. And I want to rattle off some listener emails because that's important. I haven't done it in a while. So here are some listener emails written to stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Caitlin writes, I just wanted to tell you I started your podcast with your first episode and I'm addicted. It is awesome to listen to someone else who loves him like I do. When I was maybe in 5th grade, my grandmother gave me The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. She has since passed, but the one thing I love about King is his talent for imagery and characterization with the main character. I vividly remembered the girl eating shrimp and the color of it. Same thing with Christine, the scene of the rotting body in the back seat. The podcast has really made me reflect on why I love him, and you put my thoughts into words I wouldn't have ever thought of. Thank you so much. Caitlin, thank you so much for writing in to stephenkingcast@yahoo.com, and I appreciate it. And yes, one of his strengths definitely is his characterization and his ability to create a very vivid scene. All right, and then we have Ash, who writes, Hey dude, I hope you and your family are well. I've been a huge fan of your podcast since about 2015-16, and I'm very glad to see that you are back posting more regularly. I often use your podcast after I've read something new or reread an old favorite from Cy King. I especially love your It episodes and have listened to them God knows how many times, so thank you for that. Regularly gets me through sleepless nights with my little girls or even when I have more admin tasks at work. Years ago, you mentioned a book that you recommended called Ghost Road Blues and its trilogy books as a kind of Stephen King if he finally made a book based around the time of Halloween. I was intrigued by the suggestion alone, found it on Amazon, shoved it on the wish list, and forgot about it for years. It was coming up to my birthday in early March, so I had to dig through my wish list trying to figure out what I wanted and came across the book again in my wish list. Needless to say, I bit the bullet and started to read it as soon as it arrived. I quickly tore my way through the first book in just over a week, a feat which is good for me, normally being a slow reader, and the other 2 books sitting in my to-read pile on my bedside table. I remember you had done an episode on it, but I can't find it anymore since you reposted your podcast episodes. Do you think you would ever do a podcast episode on Stephen King-like books again, or are those a thing of the past now? Either way, thank you for the suggestion, as it really was fantastic, and I can't wait to get into the other 2 books in the series once I've finished The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, another book that sat on the wish list for years. Thank you all for your amazing podcast episodes, and look forward to many more in the future. Long days and pleasant nights, Ash. So Ash, first of all, just thank you, because what you say here in this first paragraph here, I often use your podcast after I've read something new or reread an old favorite from Cy King. That is the reason why I started this podcast, because when I sat down to record the first episode of the Stephen King cast, why I thought of it in the first place was because at the time, there weren't any Stephen King podcasts. I wanted to create the kind of podcast that I myself was looking for that didn't exist. So to know that you have that and that this is functioning the way that I had wanted for myself means the world to me. So thank you so much for finding and supporting this. And thank you for supporting Jonathan Mayberry, the author of Ghost Road Blues, Full Moon Fever, and Dead Man's Song. I believe those are the titles of the 3 Pine Haven trilogy books. So what Ash is talking about is back in 2016, I believe, I did a deep dive on this trilogy of books that as he describes here, as Ash describes, what if Stephen King wrote the ultimate books on Halloween? The author Jonathan Mayberry has such strong characterization and is able to immerse you in a scene through imagery and visualization. It's an incredible job, and it's just focused on this small town with characters that you love, set around the Halloween time, and it is just a love letter to Halloween in a way that I did not know would be possible. It's incredibly written. If you have not read these books, please. The first book is called Ghost Road Blues. It's got, and me saying this may be a turnoff because it might sound too cheesy, but it's incredibly done. It's got ghosts, has vampires, has werewolves, has spirits, and it's all within this small town, and criminals, serial killers. It's incredible. And with Ash saying this, I actually might reread it again this Halloween season, because these 3 books, and they're hefty books too, all taking place within a month's time in this small town. You're not going to be disappointed. As for the reviews themselves, I need to dig them up from my archives. Yes, when I reordered everything on the main feed, I did kind of put them on the shelf. Where I place them, that remains to be seen. Most likely, I'm going to dust them off and put them up on the Constant Reader feed over on Patreon. So everyone, if you have interest in and I'm probably going to do the same with all of the Joe Hill material as well. So if you have any thoughts on that, head on over to Patreon. .com/StephenKingcast. Ash, thank you so much for the support throughout the years, and I hope to see you over on Patreon. Matt writes, I grew up in Maine, LOL, of course, being surrounded by every King movie from the 90s, but didn't actually start reading King until about 4 years ago, and I'm on my 20th book. I plan to read everything, and I'm not going in any chronological order or anything like that. Started with The Dark Tower, and I've just bounced around since. I'm currently reading It, and I think we're going to read Revival after. So what a joy for Matt. Thank you, Matt, for writing in. But what a joy for Matt that he has this plethora. You know, when I first started reading, it felt like there were just so many books to read. But in retrospect, I mean, it is just a drip in the bucket compared to what he has published since then. So to know that you've got all of these books at your disposal, it really is a gift to be able to get into him now, even if Matt may have missed the boom period of the 80s and 90s of being a Stephen King fan, to actually, you know, really discover the joy of his writing in the wake of the second boom period following the release of It, Chapter 1. It must be special. So, you know, I myself am limited to my own perspective and experiences. But if you are a newer Stephen King fan that has found your way to his fandom in more recent years, that are, you know, that is younger than me, if you're in your 20s and you're interested in King, please write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com or shoot me a message on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or Blue Sky. All right, everyone. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn my attention towards Desperation. Mick Garris' Desperation, which is from Wikipedia here, a 2006 American made-for-TV horror film based on Stephen King's 1996 novel of the same name. King himself wrote the teleplay. The film was directed by frequent King collaborator Mick Garris and stars Ron Pearlman, Tom Skerrit, Steven Weber, and Annabeth Gish. All right, so now I'm going to read the plot summary, and I'll just get right into it. So, plot. Peter and Mary Jackson are driving through the Nevada desert when Sheriff Collie Entragian stops them. He finds marijuana in their vehicle, though Entragian may have planted it. He takes them to jail. Entering the police station, they see a little girl dead on the floor, and Entragian shoots and kills Peter. Mary is thrown in a cell along with a young boy, David Carver, his parents, Ralph and Ellen, and an old man, Tom Billingsley. The dead girl is the Carver's daughter, named Pye. David kneels and prays. Steve Ames is in his truck, following famous author Johnny Marinville. Ames is Marinville's assistant. Steve picks up a young female hitchhiker named Cynthia Smith. Johnny stops in the desert to urinate, just as Entragian plants the same bag of marijuana he got from Peter and Mary in Johnny's motorcycle bag and arrests him. Back in the police station, David's mother, Ellen, asks him why he keeps praying. David reveals that he prays because God made his presence known to him by miraculously saving his friend Brian from the brink of death. He recollects that a drunk driver hit Brian when he and Brian were riding a bike. David began praying, offering to do whatever was asked of him so that his friend could be saved. At that point, Brian regained consciousness. The doctor at the hospital described Brian's recovery as miraculous. David realizes Entragian's skin is breaking out, and he keeps saying tack because he is possessed. Entragian takes Ellen so he can move his spirit into her body. He leaves his vicious dog to guard the cells. Pye's ghost appears and gives David a bar of soap that glows green. David scrubs his body with the soap and, while the dog is distracted, slips through the bars of the jail cell. David searches the police station and finds a gun on the corpse of another sheriff. He returns and shoots the dog before freeing everyone. Steve reaches the place where Entragian captured Johnny. He and Cynthia find Johnny's motorcycle hidden behind dry bushes. Cynthia and Steve search the town, finding all of the residents dead. They meet up with the escaped prisoners that night. In a disused theater, Tom tells of events that took place 20 years ago when the Chinese workers were digging in a local mine known as the China Pit, and when they discovered an evil spirit named Tak. The now possessed Ellen sends a mountain lion which kills Tom. Ellen takes Mary so that Tak can have a new body. David sees Pye's ghost in the theater. She leads him into the movie editing machine where seemingly supernaturally old footage reveals how Tak came into the town. Mary wakes up to find herself trapped in a shed surrounded by rattlesnakes, scorpions, and tarantulas waiting to be the next host for Tak. With the help of Pi, she manages to escape while seriously injuring Ellen's body. Tak is forced to take over the body of a buzzard. Johnny confesses that 40 years ago in Vietnam, he saw a boy possessed by Tak blow up the bathroom of a bar, killing 87 people. Johnny still feels guilty that he did not warn any of the patrons before fleeing the bar. The group returns to the cave with explosives they found to put an end to Tak. At the entrance, the buzzard emerges and kills Ralph. To redeem himself, Johnny goes into the mine and enters a hole leading to a pit where Tak resides. Johnny ignites the explosives, blowing up the mine and sacrificing himself while the survivors drive away in Steve's truck. Driving away from the town, they pass the empty RV owned by David's family and Peter's sister's car. Mary tells Steve to stop the truck to retrieve an overnight case from the car. In the back seat, Mary finds a photo album belonging to David with a picture of Johnny and Pi together, which Steve identifies as being signed by Johnny. So thoughts. This novel begins right away with a who's of names scrawled across the screen as old photos of miners and the Chinese scroll by. From there, we get the establishing shot of the desert, invoking The Stand to me, which conjures good memories of Mick Garris' directed Stephen King efforts. He has found success with desert-based King adaptations with an ensemble cast, so I'm hoping that we return to the high highs of The Stand following the disappointment of later movies like Riding the Bullet, Sleepwalkers, Quicksilver Highway, and The Shining. Now look, I just want to take a moment to discuss Mick Garris, because I know that I have been critical of some of his work, but there is no denying his impact or his talent. If you look at his IMDb listing, he has worked consistently for decades. Lately, it appears that he's found success in the podcast world, so all the power to you. But if I've ever seemed critical of the man or his work, please know that The Stand is one of my favorite things of all time. And to me, Critters 2, the main course, is to Easter what Jaws is to the 4th of July. Has no business being as fun as it is. Anyway, back to Desperation. Henry Thomas and Annabeth Gish driving down the open road past the sign with the dead cat strapped to it. That is very unsettling and very famous from the novel. Understandably, she's upset, and he tries to make a joke out of it. They are soon unsettled by the arrival of Collie Entragian, speeding up to them, pulling ahead of them, playing with them. It's the last thing that you want to happen when you're making your way cross-country in the middle of the desert. Surrounded by nothing but desert, cactus, and just being strangers in a strange land, they are understandably concerned when he flashes his lights to pull them over. It's an understandable, non-supernatural concern to have. He's already acting erratically, unpredictably. They're miles from civilization, far from home, at the whim of whatever authority this lawman may decide to enact upon them. So far, what stands out to me, one of the strengths of the film, is the setting. It's a strength of the book, and Mick Garris has taken full advantage of it behind the camera. You get the sense of daylight dread that comes with the infinite stretch of desert. The impossibility of life in such an inhospitable place is felt, and the vulnerability of the characters, safe only in their little traveling tin can in a wild world of danger, is conveyed. Now, I had just mentioned daylight dread. So when I think of that, and by which I mean horror movies, horror scenes which feature the daylight prominently, you can't help but think about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Midsommar, movies that there's just something so unsettling when the horror is on full display under the brightest sun possible. And that's what we're getting here. We are conditioned to believe that the horrors and the danger can only come out at night, that there is rules to the universe and to the cosmic balance, that we are safe with the sun, that the sun somehow equals radiant goodness that burns away and shines its light and protection, keeping the darkness at bay, and the darkness being evil itself, and that the monsters emerge from the shadows of night, from some infinite pool where the shadows and night itself connect to some greater infinite darkness of chaos and evil, which is why stories like this matter. Because they shake those beliefs and that concept, and it forces you to reckon with horrors existing in the everyday, literally the everyday. And somehow it just makes it so much stranger and harder to watch when those horrors are inflicted when there are no shadows, when you are supposed to be safe. And so this is a smart decision on King's part, and later on Mick Garris's part, to stay true to this aspect of the novel, to set most of it during the day. And the most hard-hitting parts of it do take place during this opening stretch of the day. And this is what you get here. You get daylight, and you get this juxtaposition of the horrors with absolute beauty. You know, the wide open sky that you see is beautiful. There's a shot of Collie getting out of his car with the whitest clouds stretched across the brightest blue sky. The colors pop, and you feel the beauty of the world, which, of course, is in stark contrast to the horrors that are soon going to exist within it. And here we get the reveal of famed character actor Ron Pearlman, who I believe is making his Stephen King debut here. And this is great casting. I mean, it's Hellboy, everybody. There's something so likable about Ron Pearlman, which is why he's so well cast here. Because while at first he's able to disarm you with a little charm, that deep, gravelly voice, his size, they all work to create a feeling of such looming danger. Clancy Brown also would have been incredible in this role. This disorientation of what to expect continues as Collie alternates between friendly and unpredictable, seeming to want to help them fix a license plate situation, but then immediately starts spacing out. And of course, there's the use of the word tack, which finds itself inserted randomly. What does this mean? Garris wisely lets the word do the heavy lifting and doesn't dwell on it, and doesn't have the characters remark upon it. Pearlman says it, and then leaves it to the audience to do the rest. Unfortunately, Collie finds the bag of pot in the van and starts shouting for them to get in the police car. Whatever friendly nature he may have exuded is now replaced by hostility, and he drives them down the road, which also includes other stranded vehicles. He drives erratically, and as he reads them the Miranda rights, he slips and says he will kill them. And as they pass into Desperation, we see the town sign adorned with dead dogs and vultures. Now here there is a great shot as they drive past the China pit itself. It's incredible to look at. It's something that my brain never properly imagined in the books, despite the fact that I've read the book multiple times. So seeing it here like this really helps show the size of this thing. You know, and have it just be right next to the road like that. It really is breathtaking, and I really appreciate being able to see that. As they drive through town, we see dead bodies strewn everywhere. Again, this is Mick Garris being able to pull from a well-proven bag of tricks. Empty streets full of dead bodies and newspapers skittering across asphalt is well within his wheelhouse, and he uses it here for full effect. This is something that really made The Stand what it was back in 1994, and then here in 2006, he is able to pull from this again to make this effective as well. Mary and Peter are pulled from the car by Collie, and he rambles about Princess Di, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and then comments on Peter sharing the same name of Peter Jackson, the director of Lord of the Rings. It's a goofy moment, and the whiplash between the goofiness of and the danger here makes for a disorientation that I happen to like. I don't remember off the top of my head if Collie was a pop cultural fan in the book. But it's that thing that Stephen King does, where he's grounding the horror with something familiar and mundane. It's just another example of that. And as soon as they enter the police station, they see the dead child on the bottom of the stairs. and he immediately shoots Peter in the gut. In the room full of police cells at the top of the stairs, the other prisoners tell Mary to shoot him with a nearby shotgun. She's unsuccessful. She's quickly imprisoned with the rest of them. And in this moment, there's a tense standoff between Collie and young David Carver, and it's clear that he senses something about the boy. He dismisses his belief in God and again references the Kanta and the Kantak as the only gods in this desert. Other prisoners include Matt Frewer from other such Mick Garris adaptations as The Stand, Quicksilver Highway, and Riding the Bullet. Notable That Guy Charles Durning, and soon to join them, frequent collaborator Steven Weber, star of The Shining. And you know they've got a hell of a band. Who is the next victim on the road? Listening to Fall to Pieces by Velvet Revolver, a band forged from the broken pieces of Guns N' Roses and Stone Temple Pilots. And I have to say that their album Contraband was really good when it came out. I really enjoyed it. Slither, Fall to Pieces, Loving the Alien, these are all great songs. And their cover of Psycho Killer, it's really, really well done. So it was fun watching Steven Weber listen to the band as he makes his way across the desert. He picks up hitchhiking Cynthia Smith, and we get some pretty groan-worthy dialogue here between the two of them. Don't call me Cookie and I won't call you Cake, she says, in a line where no human being has ever uttered something like that before. She lightly chides him for what she thinks is him checking her out, and he may be, but he's also checking out her shirt, which has Bob Dylan on it. Through the conversation, he acknowledges that he's a roadie who had worked on the Unplugged tour, and it naturally leads to his explanation of what he's doing out there, which is to follow the traveling author Johnny Marinville on a cross-country road tour. Now, I just gotta say, this is a very effective and naturalistic way to convey the necessary information. It came from the natural character interactions that they had with each other. And the conversation itself includes a little Dean Koontz acknowledgement, dig, wink. When discussing John Marinville's level of fame, she says, I pretty much stick with Dean Koontz. So again, for all of my thoughts on Dean Koontz, head on over to patreon.com/stephenkingcast. It's a nice scene. It's nothing revolutionary, but they have nice, easy banter. And like I said, it seems naturalistic. And so then it switches over to Johnny Marinville. And I had just referenced Velvet Revolver's cover of Psycho Killer, the original, of course, coming from the Talking Heads, which, by the way, featured in the end credits of the 2007, I think it came out, 2007 horror movie Behind the Mask, the Rise of Leslie Vernon, which is a great, fun movie that really takes that meta textual element from Scream and does something I think more I'm not gonna say it's more impactful than Scream, because Scream is an institution at this point, but it really takes this idea of slashers and the tropes of slashers and does something really inventive and creative and fun with it, as Leslie Vernon, this incredibly charismatic, fun, and likable wannabe next generation serial killer, it takes on all the trappings and tropes of your Freddys and your Jasons to create his own version of that, and it's done in a documentary style. It's really, really fun, and the end features this particular song. I say this because for years there has been discussion around a sequel / prequel called Behind the Mask 2, the return of Leslie Vernon, or no, it was called, at one point, it was called Before the Mask, The Return of Leslie Vernon. And so it was going to be a little bit of a prequel, a little bit of a sequel. And there was a Kickstarter for that back in about 2012, 2013, I would say. And then all conversations seemed to stop around it. And why am I talking about it right now is because last week they just had a 20th anniversary screening of Behind the Mask, and then the cast and the director and the crew announced that they were going to be making a sequel, Behind the Mask 2, The Return of Leslie Vernon, which would be great. But this isn't the first time that we have seen news around a sequel to this. So I hope that it happens. I love that first movie. I own that first movie. If you have not seen that first movie, please. It's low budget, but the strength is on all of the characters and the interactions with them. It's very, very fun. Leslie Vernon, the villain, the villainous character that he creates. It's a fun design. The backstory that they talk about, it's very, very clever, and you're gonna enjoy it. But I always think of, when I think of Psycho Killer, I think of Behind the Mask. Why am I talking about this? Oh yeah, that's right. I was talking about the Talking Heads, because it puts a smile on my face to hear David Byrne's voice coming through "Take Me to the River" start playing while Johnny Marinville makes his way across the road. It's Tom Skerritt, everybody, one of cinema's most famous and consistent mustaches. I've always been a big Tom Skerritt fan. Tom Skerritt, who portrayed Sheriff George Bannerman in the Christopher Walken starring Dead Zone. He returns to the Stephen King universe here to play Johnny Marinville, a stand-in for Stephen King himself, who famously during his Insomnia book tour drove cross-country on a motorcycle. And similarly here we have Tom Skerritt playing Johnny Marinville, a notable author who is making his book tour on the back of a motorcycle. Tom Skerritt, aside from being in The Dead Zone and this, is no stranger to horror. Clearly, like, he will always have the honor and the bona fides of being in Ridley Scott's Alien. So it's always great to see him in this genre. So welcome back to the Stephen King universe, Tom Skerritt. After pulling over to take a pee break, he becomes the latest victim of Collie Entragian, who, after confronting him about urinating in public, becomes a gleeful fanboy, happy to see a favorite author. And he's way too enthusiastic. You can tell something's very, very wrong here. He's shaking his hand with too much vigor. And again, this disorientation and disarmament of your guard, just makes Collie so unpredictable and dangerous. Things don't get any better here when a wolf emerges from the desert. Collie is quickly able to communicate with the wild animal to send it heading off back into the desert. And from there, Collie pulls the pot bag pulled from the Jackson's trunk from John's cycle bag, and it's here where the use of the word tack is finally commented upon, which Collie denies using. Collie then assaults John Marinville, breaks his nose, punches him in the stomach, throws him in the back of the cop car, and as he's covering up John's motorcycle, John is able to make a cell phone call to Steve, trying to warn him and to get help, but the cell phone service drops out. Things begin to escalate in the car as Collie sneezes and blood sprays out all over the windshield. As they drive down the road, they find the road lined with wolves, coyotes, and wild dogs, keeping an eye on the moving car. Back in the cells, David explains that he's been praying ever since the near-death accident of his friend Brian, and how he had made a deal with God if Brian had lived. As David explains this to his parents, his mother criticizes his belief in a God who would save his friend but not his little sister. Tom Billingsley, the vet and fellow prisoner, begins to explain what happened here and the change in Collie, both in personality and in size. Meanwhile, Cynthia and Steve come across the abandoned RV. While back in the cells, Collie takes David's mother and belittles him while threatening his mother. Cynthia and Steve continue to explore what they can, and they soon discover the evidence that something very bad had happened to Johnny. As they look at the bike, a wolf howls in the distance. In the cruiser, the body horror of the story starts to come into play. The skin on Collie's face is splitting and leaking blood as he drives David's mother out into the china pit. In the cells, David has a dream/vision of his god, visiting via a projection of his dead sister, providing him with the means to escape a bar of Irish Spring soap, which begins to glow like it's a gift from the Tommyknockers. David begins to lather up the soap while the other prisoners distract the dog. He slides through the bars and is able to escape the room. Meanwhile, Steve and Cynthia enter Desperation and begin to explore, finding a deserted office building with a hand in an aquarium. At the same time, David explores as well, finding nothing but dead bodies, badly murdered, including a police officer with pencils stuck through his eyes. David wisely takes the officer's gun and makes his way through the horror house. In the warehouse of the mining corporation, Steve and Cynthia continue to find dead bodies and emptiness. They find the statues taken from the pit and are drawn towards them. As they touch them, they are overcome with animalistic desire, and they're able to discover before things take a turn, and to make their way to a market overrun with dead bodies, snakes, and tarantulas. It's quite gruesome, and as they run out, they're met by the escaped prisoners. Shortly after, a figure returns to the police station, but it's not Collie, it's David's mother, who is clearly possessed by what we know as tack. She speaks with Ron Pearlman's voice, and her face is split with the same condition that had defined Collie. She calls upon the spiders to find the missing prisoners who have holed up in an old theater. In the theater, Tom starts filling them in on the history of the China Pit, believing that there's demonic force in the pit that was sealed years ago, but was released when it was recently opened. Shortly after, Tom is attacked by the mountain lion, while David is beckoned by his dead sister, God Apparition. John is able to push back the Vietnam War PTSD flashbacks to kill the mountain lion, saving Steve in the process, but unfortunately, it's too late for Tom. While they fight for their lives, David learns all about Tack in a sepia-tinted film reel depicting the origins of the China Pit, the mistreatment of the Chinese miners, and the slaughter that immediately followed the meeting of Tack. Back in the theater, Tack possessed David's mother attacks Mary, and we get a gnarly body horror moment where her face splits open. It's really well done. Mary awakens, surrounded by scorpions, snakes, dead bodies, and spiders. It's really scary. It's truly horrifying. This scene from the book is one of the most harrowing, upsetting scenes that King has ever written. I know, that's saying something. I don't expect Garris to be able to hit the same highs, and he does a pretty good job with it. She realizes the animals can't hurt her here, as she is being used by Tack to be next. David and Johnny Marinville have a debate about the role and existence of God, and he leaves the group out of fear. He makes it as far as the movie theater, where he watches a supernaturally presented film of his life in Vietnam, how he ran from a bomb, leaving everyone behind to die. Faced with the truth of his previous cowardice that had included a glimpse of Tack provided to God at the time to give him strength needed during the time he would need it the most in the present, John succumbs to the will of God and joins David in his quest to vanquish Tack. Mary makes her escape through a pile of rotting corpses and fends off David's mother. Tack transfers his essence into a nearby bird. At the China Pit, the quartet give a prayer. As they head into the pit, Tack kills David's father, and David starts to reject God for taking everyone in his life from him. Johnny is there, once, just a few minutes ago, a disbeliever, and now he's the one to remind David of the importance of believing in God, and agrees with David that God is cruel. And the cruelest aspect of him of all is that sometimes he'll let you live. John makes it to the Well of Worlds, a temple adorned with carvings of beasts and an open pit to another world. Tom Skerrit puts on his motorcycle helmet, which seems to be enough to block the spirit of Tack. It's really stupid. And then Tom Skerrit wrestles with smoke and falls into the bottom of the well, where he finds an even smaller well that houses the essence of the demonic god. He pours the gunpowder explosive through the hole and sacrifices himself by blowing it up, collapsing the China Pit and sealing Tack for good. The survivors make their way out of town. And on the way, Peter and Mary's abandoned car, they find David's yearbook, including a picture of Johnny with David's sister. Both are happy in heaven, reminding David to believe in better things. So the big takeaway that I had here, first of all, the first takeaway is, despite the book being really significantly massive, Mick Garris or ABC executives, I don't know who, they did was it ABC? I don't know. I don't even know where it aired. I just always assume ABC. But whoever made the decision to just have this be a standalone movie, not broken up across multiple nights, it was a smart move. Just letting it exist, get the best parts of it, not extend it too much, not stretch it out, allows it to, even at its not as engaging moments, the momentum still pushes through. There's no lows here, which is really good. Overall, it's very serviceable. It is much better than I thought that it was going to be. And I have been, as you know, if you've been listening to this, kind of down on a lot of the Mick Garris stuff. I just finished writing The Bullet last week, and I thought that was like awful, objectively, aggressively bad. This is good. Understanding that, there are limitations here with a TV budget, and unfortunately, it's existing in between a time where it's not quite the heydays of the 1990s with TV miniseries, but we're not in the golden age of television, and a lot of the resources aren't there yet. So it's kind of just stuck in this in-between world. And if you accept it as that, it's very effective, and it's good with a cast that you like. I mean, you got Tom Skerrit, you got Matt Frewer, you got Steven Weber, you got Ron Pearlman, you got Annabeth Gish, from Agent Reyes from the X-Files herself. So there's a lot of familiar faces with a really strong story here. And what really stood out to me as I was watching this, and I already touched upon this a little bit, this functions as a very nice thematic sequel to The Stand. It truly does. The desolation of this desert town may as well be apocalyptic. They're in the middle of nowhere, but the death and destruction seems just as it would to any of the survivors in the wake of Captain Trips, just making their way across the country. This feels a part of that. It feels tonally, thematically, and visually in line with what he had done just over a decade prior. Just like The Stand, it has a very strong ensemble cast that he is able to juggle very nicely. The dead bodies are strewn everywhere. The horrors are apparent. The desert town itself, you think about those opening moments of The Stand taking place in the desert. You think of Randall Flagg in the desert, this desert horror in the wake of tragedy and dead bodies everywhere in a Stephen King story. It makes it a very nice thematic sequel to The Stand, but on top of the ensemble piece, on top of the fact that they're both adaptations that Mick Garris directed, starring at least one of the actors who appeared in both, and there's a supernatural force. I would say that one of the biggest tethering connections between the two is faith is at the center of both of these novels and these adaptations, with a very nuanced view of a very demanding God. In The Stand, that version of God that Mother Abigail believes in, the one that sends the guys out to Las Vegas at the end. This is a demanding God. And similarly here, this is a God that will take away David, just a boy, his parents, will remove them from this world in horrible, horrible ways, and still demand that David make through in his promise. And you understand that there are greater evils out there than the demands of this, the cruelty of this God. But still, the fact that this force stands in opposition to what we know here is true evil. Like, you can't help but surrender yourself to it, but not blindly. It does come with criticism in both versions, in both The Stand and in this. So the watching this actually did it was not a slog to me, in part because it's done well, but also because I really thought that this was a nice follow up for Mick Garris to continue the exploration that he had begun over a decade prior with The Stand. And what also stood out to me was, in many ways, I think that Tom Skerritt did a. I don't know if he was the best person to play Johnny Marinville, who I remember differently from the book. John Marinville kind of seemed to have more of and I could be misremembering this, more of the Larry Underwood, Eddie Dean kind of aspect to his character. But here, we do know in the book, at the very least, part of the John Marinville character is based on Stephen King's own experiences, and he does his thing that he always does, where he writes of a writer. And so we get that here. It's one of the Stephen Kingisms that we can't help but love, or at least if we don't love it, we have to acknowledge it. But here, watching Tom Skerritt, maybe it was the hair, maybe it's the fact that Tom Skerritt is. I like Tom Skerritt as an actor, and one of the reasons why I like him is that he's commanding in his presence, but without a lot of charisma, I guess. I don't know how you would describe Tom Skerritt. There's something likable, but there's something also a little bit cold. Maybe not cold. I'm not describing this very well. What I was saying about this is that he reminded me of Stephen King in this a lot. Watching this, I just felt like I was actually watching someone do a Stephen King impersonation to a certain extent. And I was very just intrigued at this, and I don't think it's purposeful. I don't think that Tom Skerritt said, I'm going to invoke Stephen King, but am I wrong? I feel like if you're listening to this and you don't necessarily agree, please watch it. And let me know if you sense Stephen King, and it's not just the fact that he's a writer, and it's not just the fact that he is, borrowing from the events of Stephen King's real life in driving cross country on that book tour. But there's just something very evocative of the author himself with this performance. All right, so now we have. Easter eggs. I'm going to talk about some Easter eggs here because there's a couple. One is probably the most glaring is Red Rum Dog is scrawled on the wall in David's dream sequence. Red rum, of course, being the famous phrase from the Shining, and here red rum being murder backwards. So murder God is what's scrawled on the wall here. Collie Entragian tells John Marinville that he is his number one fan, which of course is the famous refrain from Misery. And then we have number 19. In the yearbook on the hopscotch grid, we see the numbers 10 and 9, which equal 19, the famous number that works its way through all of Stephen King's works. So like I said, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it. I didn't know if I was going to like it. You just never know what you're going to get with a Mick Garris adaptation. But this, I got to say, I enjoyed it. And it doesn't overstay its welcome. And even at times where you see the limitations of the budget and what you can do on television, because you're not spending that long, you don't feel like you're really wasting your time. So for what it is, it's well done. With that being said, I would actually like to see this adapted again for the big screen, because I think that you could really get creepy and really get disturbing and really get into some conversations of faith in some meaningful ways. I'm just thinking about when Collie, just thinking about the Nevada sky on the big screen, thinking about how deep the shadows and darkness can be in the desert at night, with a tack possessed body starting to break, the skin starting to break, and maybe the eyes shining in the darkness, and the skin, and the blood, running from the slits in the skin, kind of shining off of moonlight. I could just see that being very, very effective. Less effective in this movie is the flashback to the moment when David made his bargain to God, which it's laughable. The scene where a dummy standing for a boy goes flying into the air and hits a house from a car crash. For a moment that is supposed to be as integral to the plot as it is, it's something that doesn't need to be in the film. I mean, David explaining what happened is more than enough. But I digress. I think that being able to see this on the screen, that could be pretty powerful. Zach Kreger, I think, would do a great job with it. Rob Savage, who directed Stephen King's The Boogeyman, I think would do a really good job with it. There's definitely some authors, some directors out there with some flourish who could really commit to hey, there's a guy out there, what's his name? What's he done? He's done some Stephen King stuff before in the past. His name escapes me at the moment. Oh yeah, that's right, Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan would do a great job with this as well. I mean, allowing him, as he did before with Midnight Mass, I feel like a broken record, lauding the successes of Mike Flanagan. But yeah, I mean, knowing what he was able to do with Midnight Mass, again, allowing him to go back to that well of worlds and discuss faith in the role of God that plays in our lives up against a supernatural threat, I think would be wonderful. Well within his wheelhouse. I would love to see it. So, all right, everyone, those are my thoughts on the Mick Garris adaptation of Stephen King's Desperation. It has been enjoyable. If you haven't checked out any of the stuff over on Patreon, head on over, check it out, see what you think. Patreon.com/StephenKingcast. And if you have any thoughts on this episode or other episodes that I've done, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. And you can follow me on Blue Sky, TikTok, Facebook, and on Instagram. That's all I got this week, everyone. So may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I'll see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.